Hey everyone, what's up and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about aim training. This is a subject that I have become fairly passionate about, specifically over the past year to year and a half. A lot of you who have watched my channel before would know that I originate from controller roots. I have been a controller player my whole life, but the topic of aim is something that has always interested me. And through that interest, I have now surpassed and invested over 500 hours of aim training into my aim journey. I'm pretty sure I'm at like 570 to 580 hours now, but for the sake of the YouTube title, 500 hours of aim training and what it has taught me. Today's video is going to be one big conversation covering topics from whether or not I recommend aim training to misconceptions about aim training, the journey itself and what it's been like after aiming 400 or 500 hours, things I didn't know, things I do know, some basic aim knowledge that I think will help everybody because it definitely helped me. And most importantly, how aim training translates to games, because I think most of you guys watching this are not aim trainer mains, even though there are some aim trainer mains out there. Believe it or not, there are people who exclusively play aim trainers because they are their favorite games. I now understand it, and I honestly do have a greater appreciation for aim trainers because low-key, they kind of are the best games. The aim trainer will always be there for you when there's nothing else to play. But I think a lot of us like to improve so that we can see that skill that we nurture outside of the game translate to what we see inside of the game. And like I said, we're going to talk about it all today. So to start things off, I straight up want to answer the question of whether or not I feel like aim training is worth it. Do I recommend aim training? And after putting in 500 hours, not because of the time I've invested and I can't get back, I genuinely mean it when I say I do believe that aim training, if you care about solely the concept of being able to aim and mechanically expressing skill in a way that others aren't able to unless they put in that time as well, I think you'll find a lot of value in aim training. And yes, you will see results in the games that you play outside of these trainers. And so before everyone runs to the comment section to explain why they do recommend or don't recommend aim training, after 500 hours of aim training, I want to help clarify some misconceptions that may fuel a lot of you guys' opinions. So let's talk about misconceptions. I feel like, oh man, there's so many. It's kind of tough to know where to start, to be honest. Let's talk about the biggest one, probably like the elephant in the room. Does aim training translate to the games you play? Immediately, yes. Yes, it does. At the end of the day, if you really look closely enough at every single game, each game is just a glorified aim trainer. Whether you're going against real people, whether you're going against AI, the limitations at which the game grants the player as movement opportunities will dictate the aiming scenarios that you encounter. That is why aiming can vary from scenarios that you generally encounter on a regular basis from game to game, because there are different movement options, movement opportunities. This is the same for AI, whether you're playing a story game and just shooting a bunch of random bots. This is all just glorified, pretty looking aim training. And I think that once you start seeing it that way, you'll understand how you can almost tweak and refine any specific skill movement that you want to track, flick onto, anything in aim trainers, and it's special for those reasons. That kind of ties back into why I feel like aim trainers are the best games, because it's kind of every game in one. It just doesn't look pretty or have the personality or spice that, you know, some of your favorite games do. Another misconception is that you need to play an aim trainer in order to have good aim. Not the case at all. Every game is basically just a glorified aim trainer. And the beauty of actual aim trainers is that you can target specific scenarios that you know you are weak at. Aim trainers allow for very controlled environments that help you accelerate the rate at which you encounter scenarios to improve at them quicker than you would in regular video games. In a video game, you may only encounter that scenario, one every 20 games or one every 50 games. It's going to take you a lot longer to improve at that specific style of aiming or that specific mechanic, but it's not to say you couldn't do it if you played the game long enough or encountered this situation on a consistent basis. So no, you don't need to aim train to be a good aimer, but aim trainers are a great way to become great aimers. And a third and final misconception I wanted to address is that you can play aim trainers to get good at your favorite games. This is simply not the case. No matter what shooter you come from, whether that's Call of Duty, Apex Legends, Counter-Strike, Valorant, Marvel Rivals, or Overwatch, there's no amount of aim training that you could do in this lifetime that will make you better understand the ability synergies that take place between characters in hero shooters, the positional awareness you need to have when playing games like Warzone or Valorant. Aim trainers don't make you great at games, they make you great aimers. And so enough with the misconceptions. Now that we all have a better understanding of what aim training is and why I believe that you should do it, I now want to talk about my journey, because it was pretty deep. I mean, heck, looking back at it, it was 500 hours. When I think back to my very first time opening an aim trainer, I remember thinking, what in the world is this program? There's so many different scenarios and so many different routines. How do I know which one to choose, which one's right for me? What difficulty I should even choose. And although the journey was very complex and honestly hard to learn, it's what made the journey the journey. I feel like where I've gotten my aim to now isn't actually what has satisfied me at the end of this journey that, to be honest, I feel like is far from over, but it's what I've learned and the fact that I've been able to grow and overcome that has made me feel fulfilled. I think the toughest battle at the beginning of this aim training journey, and I think you could say the same for a lot of other things in life, is the battle of not knowing what you don't know. Everybody wants to improve, but improving and getting better is a very intentional process. And unless you're intentional with it, it's hard to improve. And so I wanted to talk about just a handful of things that I believe to be the foundation of what I believe to be good aim, because I feel like these little pieces of knowledge really helped me in the way I look at aiming. And although it won't make you a better aimer instantly, is a good foundation of knowledge and skill sets to have when moving forward or beginning. Let's talk about your peripherals, your mouse and your mouse pad. Mouse pads are a very overlooked part of people's setups, but they really do control the mouse experience, whether that's a very glidey and fast surface you're moving your mouse on, or something that's very friction based and provides a lot of control in order to stop your mouse on a dime when you need it to stop. Although the mouse is very important when it comes to aiming, because that is the tool you are aiming with, I would almost argue that the variance in choices matter more when it comes to your mouse pad. Finding a pad that really works for you, or that you prefer, or caters to the specific style of game you are playing, will overall probably have a bigger impact on your aim and understanding how that pad functions than the meticulousness of the sensor on the best mouse that you still don't have. In terms of your mouse, I honestly feel like there are many great mice out there. I feel like once you start looking at the upper echelon of what the mouse world has to offer to you, I find the shape of the mouse tends to matter a lot more than the specs at which they're offering. Finding a mouse that fits nicely to your hand and accommodates your grip style, I think will ultimately have more of an impact on your aim once again than the actual specs. Now, some of you guys are probably wondering, what are grip styles? Well, there are many different ways to hold a mouse, some of which probably can't even be described. There's fingertip grip, there's palm grip, there's claw grip. At the end of the day, this is all stuff you guys could probably just look up and find in a quick Google search, but I personally hold my mouse in a fingertip grip. It allows for fine control over the mouse with specifically your fingers, because I do feel when you hold the mouse with a palm grip, you're actually limiting the extensions at which have control over your mouse. I always suggest to just hold the mouse in the way that feels natural to you, but if you are not comfortable or happy with the way you are currently holding a mouse, be open to the opportunity to try new ways of holding it. Something else I learned that is just common sense to me at this point, and I really think a lot of other people would enjoy looking at sensitivities in this light, is working in centimeters per 360. A lot of times people ask, what's your sensitivity? And you're like 1.72 in Warzone at 1600 DPI. I have no idea if that's a good sensitivity, but like that's how most people communicate their sensitivities. People then have to worry about what your DPI is. People then have to worry about what game you're playing and the actual value they have to punch into their settings menu. Whereas when you work in centimeters per 360, I know that no matter what DPI you're on, no matter what values the game is using, if I drew out 35 centimeters on a table and I move my mouse 35 centimeters, it would do one full 360 in any game that I'm talking about. We talk sensitivity in terms of distance, and I feel like it's a very clean and understandable way of dealing with sensitivity as a whole. But now I want to talk about how aiming actually translates to games. You guys heard me earlier in the video say that every game is basically just glorified aim training scenarios, but what are those scenarios? What are the different forms of aim? And this is probably the most impactful piece of information that I learned. This is not something that's going to fully teach you and inform you about these topics. This is something, like I said, you guys can go and Google and research yourself and learn more about them. But I think just the introduction and revealing of what you once didn't know, now you know, is going to be really helpful in creating a good foundation of aiming properly. So how does aim training translate to games? Let's take a look at a shooter like Apex Legends. Apex Legends is an extremely track heavy game, but Apex Legends has always been known for being extremely mechanically intensive because of the wide variety of scenarios that the game offers. There are heavy tracking scenarios, there are very fine clicking scenarios when you're shooting somebody with a Kraber from 700 yards out. There's a lot of variance at which you could run into in terms of aiming scenarios. But let's switch on over to a game like Valorant or Counter-Strike. These are tactical shooters. And in my opinion, there isn't a ton of tracking that goes on in these games. Now, that's not to say tracking isn't something you'll ever run into. There's always going to be tracking for as long as there's moving targets. But clicking scenarios are going to be a lot more common in this game because people can't move while they shoot. And so although you're going to be tracking to get onto the target, the actual mechanics of getting good at static clicking, dynamic clicking are going to be much more fundamentally applicable. It's not often you find people standing still in Apex. And so I wanted to talk about the 6 different forms of aiming that once I then knew, was able to better pinpoint and dictate problems that I found in specific areas of my aim because I knew which category they came from and I knew specifically what scenarios I needed to do to work on improving it. The 6 different forms of aiming can be broken down into 3 categories. These categories could be defined as clicking scenarios. These are going to be generally clicking on dots, a single click to kill the target. Next up, we're going to have tracking scenarios, which, as you guess it, are more tracking based. It requires you to stay on the target, not just click the target and hold down your cursor to secure a kill after an extended period of time. And lastly, we have target switching, which is the ability to move your crosshair from target to target, but as quickly and accurately as possible. Now that I've described these 3 major categories of aiming, you guys can probably already start to see where each of these categories stem from in games. You'd know that Valorant is probably more clicking based, Apex Legends probably more tracking based, and Call of Duty, there's people constantly popping up in multiplayer on your left side. Next thing you know, he's behind you. Next thing you know, he's 90 degrees to the right. A lot of target switching. And so let's look at clicking scenarios first, because like I said, those were major categories, but there's 6 in total. Static clicking is the ability to accurately click targets that are not moving at all on your screen. This practices a lot of target switching because like I said, you're switching from target to target, these of which are not moving at all in static clicking scenarios. So you've got to accurately and quickly move from target to target. But most importantly, static clicking teaches you to learn how to take your time and make your fine adjustments and secure clicks. Next up, we have dynamic clicking, which, as you guessed it, is still clicking. Although micro adjustments are just as important as they were in static clicking, you don't have to do so on moving targets, which in its entirety is a completely different skill set than you have to learn for just standing still targets. I just want to clarify that these categories of forms of aim don't always completely isolate themselves. A lot of times, some of these categories will entail the ability to aim in a different style with it. And with that being said, we're going to move on to smooth tracking. Tracking is the ability to keep your cursor over a target in order to secure the kill. And smooth tracking is the ability to do that for long extended periods of time while pushing your body to its limits of being able to be steady. Shake is something you've probably heard about in terms of a weakness when it comes to aiming, and smooth tracking will definitely iron that problem out. Being able to trust the direction that your target is moving without showing symptoms of predictive aim, of you jittering because you think it's going to move in a different direction, just goes to show you that a lot of times the issues that we feel physically actually stem from your mental. And next up, we have reactive tracking, which once again is still tracking, but it's the ability to constantly adjust to changes in direction and do so in a way where you practice your smoothness. Reactive tracking is a good example of a form of aim that stems from good fundamentals of another. Being able to have true, good, and smooth tracking will really aid you in the ability to smoothen out through reactive scenarios. Reactive tracking is probably the hardest form of aiming because it is so rapid. It's definitely the most stimulating and requires a ton of focus. The last two forms of aiming are probably my favorite just because of how fun they are to play, whether I'm playing an actual game that has a lot of target switching scenarios or I'm playing an aim trainer. It's all equally as fun to me. Speed target switching is the ability to quickly swap between targets. You've probably seen clips of speed target switching on Twitter when people are playing Call of Duty and people accuse them of hacking because they're flicking from one side of their screen to another. This is just the ability to do it quickly. Aim training will teach you to move as quickly as possible, all while not being at the expense of accuracy. A lot of times in speed target switching, these are very low HP targets that don't take a lot of bullets to kill, and so therefore there isn't a ton of tracking that goes into these scenarios. But that leads us into the final type and form of aiming, which is evasive target switching. Evasive target switching is all the fundamentals of speed target switching, but once you get onto target, you now have to implement tracking fundamentals because the target isn't going to die right away. You now have to track a reactive tracking target, or you have to track a target that is going to test your smoothness. And so I know that was a ton of information to digest, and bear with me if you're still hanging in there, but I did want to share the 6 different forms of aiming because, like I said, you don't know what you don't know, and once you are aware of them, I feel it really helped me when it came to the learning process and being able to pinpoint my issues. Obviously, there's so much depth to each of those forms of aiming and so much to learn in terms of technique and nuance to them. So I highly recommend that you guys go do your own research regarding those categories because, yeah, you will learn lots and it will create great fundamentals for your ability to aim. It's very important that when it comes to aim training, you do work hard, but I didn't need to tell you that. Working hard is very important, but it is not the only factor when it comes to learning. I think you need to work hard to want to learn because aiming and all other things in life are a never-ending journey of constantly growing. I don't think anybody has ever seen someone go into the gym and squat with terrible form and just become a magically gifted squatter when it comes to technique over time because they consistently squatted poorly. But when you go into the gym, you need to have a good fundamental basis of technique that will provide a great foundation for you to build a strong body on top of. Learning is equally as important as working hard. But speaking of working hard, as important as working hard is, I also believe in rest and breaks when you find them necessary. They always say a castle isn't built in a day, and therefore it won't fall in one either. When you need breaks, when you need moments to re-inspire yourself, to take time to explore other things that you also want to learn and grow out in life, take the time to do those. It'll make you appreciate the journey of achieving great aim even more. Be dedicated, but don't drive yourself out of this passion. It can be very discouraging at times because there are hours you'll put in where you feel like you're not moving anywhere. But it's the ability to pursue and keep going that will teach you everything you need to know, not just in aiming, but in life. And so if you ask me what 500 hours of aim training taught me, it's that the journey has just begun and the journey is never over. So enjoy it, smell the roses, have fun, become great, and I will catch you all in the next video. Thanks so much for watching, and subscribe if you guys want to see more. Keep up, stay up. Peace out.